Hello, is it good? No? You got me? Testing, 1, 2, there we go. There we go, all right. Hello, everyone. Hi, thanks for coming. My name is Morgan Landis, like she said. A little bit about me. I am actually the co-leader of IXDA, which is the Interaction Design Association here in Columbus. We have a few people here. And we are kind of the, I guess, complement to Columbus Web Group. We do things together. We are talking about some of the similar subjects, which is why I was here to kind of share my experience. A little bit more about me. I was published in an international bestseller. I've lived abroad in Brazil, so fala português. Fala comigo. And a long time ago, I used to do stand-up comedy and used to travel and get paid for it. So that is me at the Funny Bone. But the most important and the most relevant information about me is that I am the owner of Contented Designs. So we create digital experiences and creative solutions. Now, the reason why I did this because after 11 years of freelancing and contracting, 8 specifically in the digital world, I noticed a pattern. Whether the projects were for large organizations or large projects, or the project was for smaller organizations and agencies, I would always start out a project like this. I'd be like, yes, let's do this. Design for you, design for you, design for you. We're going to do this. I love what I do. And so whenever I started, everything would be like this. But then near the end of the project, or maybe near the end of certain days, I'd go home and do this. Has anyone else been there before? Good, a couple of you. Maybe you guys aren't criers. Maybe you guys are more like this. Yeah, this is my favorite. I think this is actually more common than me crying. In fact, if some of you guys feel like that, what are some current projects you guys are on that could be working better? Is there anyone here that's having trouble on the current project? Yeah? Do you guys want to share a little bit?
Yeah, sure, I guess. We have 3 developers, 1 designer, and no project managers. So we just switched off of Trello. We lost enough there on Trello. Had to import everything into Craft. And then Craft is too product focused, so we can't coordinate the marketing and other aspects of our project.
Right, so you need organization, and sounds like there's some missing people, like a project manager, to kind of help this organization. Good. Anyone else? So yeah, that's what happens, is that you start a project, and some common problems start showing up. Things go awry, people aren't doing things they should be doing, or you don't have the right people to do those things. And after a while, it just becomes overwhelming. If your focus and energy is on trying to work around these problems, then there's going to be less of a focus and energy on actually creating a good product, especially for the other customers. So how do we fix this? Benjamin Franklin said, for every 1 minute of organization, you earn 1 hour. Now, I'm not the math genius expert, but I'm pretty sure I know ratios. And that means if we spend just 1 hour of organizing beforehand, we can get 60 hours earned back. So that means instead of the miscommunication, instead of the changing from one place to another, we can figure out what we need to do beforehand so we don't have to do duplicated work later. Also, if we go with the math theme, if time equals money, you can save your company a lot of money if you're not doing duplicated work and wasted time and having to add people in the middle of the project. But most importantly, it saves your soul from dying a little bit every day. So, now to save you from purgatory, you can create a project brief. Now, in this project brief, it's really going to tell you about the whole project. everything that's inside of it. And just to tell you a little bit how this works, is anyone here familiar with user flows? Yeah, good, most of you. So this is a very, very simple user flow. In most user flows, you figure out what the user is trying to do, their goal or their task. And you figure out how the user is going to move through the information in order to get to the task. Well, with project organization, it's a similar idea. But this time, you're looking at the information and figuring out how it's going to move through the users so that we all end up at the same goal and task. So the project brief is going to work us through this process to ensure that we have the information flowing through the right users. We're going to do this in 4 different steps. The first is to talk about the purpose, our end goal and task. The parameters, these are our pain points like budget and time constraints. The people involved, so all the users, the information is going to go through. And the process, and that's the direction of the flow. So first, let's talk about the purpose. What's the first thing we should ask on any project? Anyone? What's the goal? Very good. Why are we doing this? That is the very first, most important question that you should ask on every single project. Now, that seems kind of obvious. Like, okay, we're going to redesign a website. That's a goal. We're going to create this app. That's a goal. But it's not specific enough. We need to know why we're going to do that goal. As in, like, are we doing SEO, a redesign for a website to increase our search engine optimization? Are we doing this app to make it easier for customers to get their meds? It has to really be focused on what the user's goal is, not necessarily what ours are. A way to really figure out the main reason is to ask who started it. There was one project I worked on where we got the project and we said, hey, we wanted this feature of ours to be easier for users to use. They don't understand it. Customer advocacy is getting a lot of calls about it. We're like, great. And we did 6 months of work. We did our research, we did our designs, we did our usability testing. And then all of a sudden, someone comes in and goes, oh, hey, here's a PowerPoint slide of copy and images like cut and pasted into it, and this is how you should design it. And we're like, but that doesn't match the end goal. We soon figured out it's because the end goal was not actually to make the users understand this better. The end goal was actually to meet a regulation. A regulation, by the way, that had not even been like announced to the world. It was just what this product owner had said was going to happen in the next few years. So if we had gone to that person who started it and talked to them and really dug into that questions, we could have really figured out what that end goal was, and that means we didn't have to duplicate work and go after his design and try to figure out his design versus our design. So yes, when you talk to that person who started it, you need to figure out what the really goal is. Sometimes it's just they want to rebrand it. They want to make their product look prettier. That's fine. Sometimes it's meeting legal or accessibility standards. That's fine as well. Just make sure you understand the goal. Next is the parameters. So again, like I said, this is the constraints like our budget and our time that usually makes things a little bit more difficult. I usually, as a contractor, before I started Contented Design, when I would join teams, this was already decided. In fact, that's usually why I was brought on, because they figured out they needed extra people or needed to bring someone in. But I can tell you there's a few things that's helped me in my business when it comes to parameters, when creating budgets and time. The first one is when you're estimating how much time something is going to cost. You're going to want to know the process before estimating. So you should have what team you think you need to have together, the different steps to reach there, and that way you can really figure out how much time it's going to take. And then you're going to get an estimation of what everyone on that team needs. You're going to tell you 2 to 4 weeks, and that's fine. My tip is to double it. The reason why is that you never know what's going to happen. First of all, no one's going to complain if you get done early. If you tell them it's going to take a month and you get it done in 2 weeks, they're going to be excited about it. You're going to look good, good for everybody. Also, you never know when something's going to happen. For example, tonight, we had audio and technical problems, so we had to start 15 minutes late. Sometimes that happens. In fact, all the time that happens. So if you have time available and made in there during the process, then you're not going to get caught left behind. Next is budget. I hope you guys like Silicon Valley, because there's a lot of these. So yeah, when it comes to budget, I've actually never worked for a guy who is in this or worked for a company. I mean, companies do this, but they don't want to spend that much on a project. So a lot of times, budget is going to be a big constraint on a lot of people. I find there's usually 3 different ways to get a budget together. The first, it can be in iterations. There's like sprint style, where you pay for parts of the project at a time. The time where it's locked, where someone comes to you and you say, I only have this amount, this is all I can do, and you're kind of stuck within that amount. And then there's hourly, in which you keep building a project until they say they've run out of money. Now, with each of these, when you're estimating cost on your team or in your project, get an estimation of what you think it will cost, and again, double it. And the reason why I do this is because you want your car to go like this, not like this. Now, what that means is that if you build an amazing product, you want it to be the best. You're going to get all the bells and whistles in there. It's going to cost some money, and it's going to happen. And it's going to be happier if you can go like this instead of this. So yes. Now, when it comes to this, the reason why I want to do it is because it is so much easier to take away from something than it is to add to it. Every single project I have ever been on, you can redesign the doors, but you can't add doors afterwards. It is so much harder to push it up through corporations or with small businesses when you're like, oh, hey, you need to do this. They're like, I don't have the money. So that's why you need to estimate it beforehand that, hey, this might be the higher end. Not only that, it's a good sales tactic, because once you give them the high number, you can be like, look, we can adjust this a little bit. And when you're doing adjustments on that budget, you want to include the most important features first to both the user and the stakeholder. So again, you're going to want to sit down, look at all the features, rank them from most important to least important, and figure out how you can put in those top 3, because that's really going to make the product at least the most viable product that there is. Next, we have people, or how the users are going to get the information moved through them. Now, knowing what everybody does is really important in communicating and collaborating effectively, so we're actually going to walk through some of the most common people. We have our business people, of course. They're the ones that decide things. They don't really make a lot of stuff, but they make a lot of decisions, and mostly because they're the ones that can fire you. We have deciders. Again, these are the people who are actually on the top, who's going to say yes or no to something. Approvers. These are the people who, if you're on the UX team or your development team or whatever team you are, they're the ones that are going to be saying, yes, this is good enough, or no, this isn't. Organizers. Again, these are the project managers and strategists who keep everyone on track. Much like this gentleman's project, it sounds like he needs someone to kind of like corral the horses. So these are the people who help corral the horses. And the knowers. These are subject matter experts. Now again, it depends on your project on what your SME is going to be. For example, if you're working on redesigning a website whose focus is search engine optimization, you're going to need an SEO specialist. For the many of us who work in financial around town or work in healthcare, you're definitely going to need legal, because they have a lot of things they have to tell you you can and cannot do. Or for example, if you're working in an AR or VR situation, you're going to have someone who understands that, whether it's building it or how people interact with it. Next, you have the production people. Again, these are the people who actually make the things. And these fall into two basic groups. We have the user experience designers. Now, and then we have the development people. Now, in other projects, for marketing, for example, these would be like the graphic designers and the copywriters. They have to work together to make advertisements work. For industrial design, there's the people who create the magic and do the science. So they are in different teams. But in digital, we have these two people. Now, when it comes to user experience, I am personally grew up in this space, so I know a little bit more about this. And I always get the question, what exactly does user experience do? Well, we create the look and the feel of a digital product. So essentially, we make sure this doesn't happen. Right? So how many of you have ever gone to a website and not been able to find the information you wanted? Right. Okay, how many people have used an app or software and not been able to complete your task and just give up? A little bit less, but still a lot of you. So this is why user experience is important. We're the people who go through that information and organize it in a way so that the user can understand. And there's different parts to the team. We have the UX researcher. They're really important, and they come first because they're the ones that are really diving deep into the data that our users are already giving us. A lot of times, this is their own user flow using Google Analytics. Sometimes this is doing usability testing on your design to make sure it's working. Overall research is very important to make sure you're asking that question, why? And this is why we're doing it. Information architects. These people organize and label the information. More often than not, you'll know these people because they are creating the site maps, they're creating the navigation schemes, they're doing the taxonomy. They're really, really go in depth on the information and how the user is going to interact with that information. They're really good at organizing that. They also work closely with content strategists and marketing people to ensure you have the right design or the right idea throughout it. And I just wanted to say a quick note about content strategists. My last job the last contract I was on, they had a content strategist just for the project. In general, content strategist is actually more of a SME. They're more someone who knows the information and where it's going. They tend to be a little bit bigger than UX, as in they do the whole company's information. So they're the ones figuring out the editorial calendar of the social media. They're figuring out when you want to blog, what we should blog about. They talk about, what part of this information should go where in the larger scheme of things, not in particular digital products. So I'm finding more and more people are working with content strategists, but don't always understand what they do. And they do have a say. They help the information architect to work together to figure out what information is needed. They're not always just on the UX team. Next, we have the UX and interaction designer. Again, these create page layouts and interactions. Most places, this is one thing. Most jobs that I've had, the UX and the interaction designer are the same person. But in larger specialized agencies like Google, they actually have these two people as separate people. They have the UX designer who creates the page layout, and then they have an interaction designer that actually focuses in on those micro interactions where they spin and animate and do all the cool stuff that we do. We also have the user interface designer. These are the people who really give the face to the product. And I just know I have friends who do this. They are not just a graphic artist. They actually have a purpose. And the purpose is to make it look like you want to interact with this piece. It's not just about making it pretty. It's about showing you what purpose is where. It's about making you notice the button. It's about making you notice the certain piece of information. they also get most of the credit because you see most of their work. Next, for larger projects or more complicated projects like machine learning or AR and VR, you're going to have experienced architects, where these people really look at the big picture and see how the information is going to be gone through, but they also touch intangible informations, like really like it's not just about the digital interactions, about the personnel interaction as well. And we also have the data scientists and analysts, and again, they're needed for the larger concepts where you need to grab a lot of data and understand how your user is going to use it. For example, when it comes to medicine, I'm sure there's a lot of us who need to figure out, like, how often is this person coming in? How often is this person saying this is the issue versus this is the issue? This is all about looking at all that data and figuring out what's most important. Next, we have the development. Now, again, like I said, I'm not a developer, but I have worked with many of them. And the main thing I know how to do is just not to piss them off. Can I ask, is there really a spaces versus tab fight? Okay, so yes, there really is. How many spaces are there? How many of you are spacers? Oh, no, just 2 of you guys? It's just tabs. Just do tabs. All right. So again, like I said, when I go through these are more about people I work with. So the business analysts. Now these are actually the bridge between business, UX, and development. But whenever I've worked with them, they've usually sat with development, so that's where I kind of see them. They do focus on the technical side a little bit, but they've often helped me on my job where we think a user is going to be able to have this happy path, and they're like, well, actually, the technology makes this error every time, so we need to have something to fix it. And so I work with them a lot to make sure all the scenarios are covered. The front-end developer. Again, these are the people who actually create and code everything into magic. Like, they're the ones that code everything. And they're also super, super important when it comes to ADA compliance. So again, ADA compliance is helping for those who have disabilities. And since we're here, I'm sure in the medical world, I know in the financial world that I've worked in, they're really focused on it well. So this is really about making sure that's completed with our UI designers. The back-end developer, they code things into the front. So this is when they code things, the front gets, and the front makes it look good. No, the back-end developer, again, they're the ones actually pulling the information out from the servers and the deep space in order for it to come to the front. Program and engineer. They are more often on bigger projects, again, like AR and VR, machine learning, where, again, they do create the software. They are also magic to me. And quality assurance. Again, this is just making sure everyone is covering everything they need to do, everything is working as intended, and everything's set and ready to go before delivery. Now, I've talked about each one of these groups. As we go into the process, the first thing you want to do from each of these groups is assign a point person. So the UX team should have one, the development team should have one. If you're working with specialized SMEs, whether it's marketing or whether it's legal, they should have a point person as well. And what this does is that it helps direct the traffic. If, say, I'm a marketing person, and I need to look at the mock-ups of a design to make sure its branding is correct, I need to know who I need to talk to. So I'm going to go to the UX lead or whatever and be like, hey, so where are these mock-ups? Who do I talk to? And they can say, oh, here's the UI designer. She can give those to you. Or they can be like, here's the person you need, and direct them to that traffic. Again, as a front-end strategist, I know a little bit less about the magic of back-end development and front-end development. So I'm going to need to go to those people and be like, which one of you can do this for me? And that's why it's important to have a point person for each of these groups because they can help you get to where you need to go. Like I said, that is how all the users and how it's going to move through them. Now we're going to talk about the process. We're going to look about how the information moves through each one of these. As I talk about this, there's two environments to keep in mind. Most often, places that I work at fall into these two areas. There's Waterfall. As you can see here, more often than not, Waterfall is used when the requirements are, I should say, fixed. That all of these things need to go out right now, need to go. Where the time and the resources, they're a little bit more variable. You may have to get them all out at once, but it could be next month or it could be in 3 months. Same with resources. You may one here now, but you can bring them in or add people as you go along. In general, Waterfall is, again, everything needs to go out at once. And it follows a traditional pattern. Discover what your stakeholders and users need. Design it and test it. Develop it and test it, and then deliver it. So it's pretty simple. Now, the other one is Agile. Being a word person, I first thought it meant this. But it does kind of follow this. Agility or Agile does mean a little bit more flexible. And when I say it's a little bit more flexible, it's because every single place that I've worked at that have said they're Agile has all done it differently. They have their own kind of style, and they have their own kind of specialties on how they do it. In general, though, Agile is used when you have to get something done at a certain time. You don't have any other things that you can add into it. And your requirements, though, don't all have to be done at the same time. They can be done a little bit at a time. So it looks a little bit more like this. Or in some places, it looks a little bit more like 1, 2, 3, where they're doing it concurrently in different teams or persons. Again, like I said, this is where Agile, for me, has been different in every place, so it really depends on how they're doing it in yours. Now that we know the users, we're going to figure out how the information is going to flow through each of them. And what I will do, what I'm proposing will work for both of them, both Agile and for Waterfall. You're going to start with making a profile for every person that's on it. And this is including the stakeholders. If they're too busy to do it, one of you guys can do it. But just in general, you need to know who's in there. You need to know what their name and title is, who approves the work. And again, this could be the supervisor, or it could be the stakeholder, or it could be that they are the approver. Either way, you need to know what part of the process they are. And what do they do? So in general, just like, hey, I'm the information architect, so I design information. And what are their deliverables? And this is the most important part. You want to know what's going to be the result of what they're doing. So for me, it could look something like this. I'm the information architect. I have to have my work approved by the UX director. I help organize the information on this website. And we're going to do sitemap, navigation, taxonomy to change or move to the next person. Now, why would we need something like this? Anyone? Everyone's on the same page. Thank you. Yes. For those people, again, like me, who don't know what everyone does or don't know who are all the players in this project, this is a great little card sort where you can be, or not card sort, a little like business card where you can be like, okay, who is this person? If I have a question, this is the person I can go to. But it doesn't end there. Most of the stakeholder information in there, but for the production people, you also want to know, what do you need to complete your job? So when you're thinking about your deliverables, what are all the types of information you need to complete your job? This, by the way, can change for each project. You're going to have some of the roles the same. You're going to have some of the responsibilities the same. But again, what you're looking for when you're redesigning a website for search engine optimization is going to be different from what you're looking for when you're working on an AR, VR app. So generally, it's going to stay the same, but it's going to work a little different for each project. So again, who and how you will get that information. This helps you to really think about the to-do list you need to create for each person. They have to be like, okay, if I need to complete this type of deliverable, who am I going to get that information from? How am I going to get it? Is it just talking to someone, or do we need to do research? Do we need to do this? Do we need to do that? This is a great way to start a to-do list for each person. And who will you be handling the information or handing the deliverables off to? Again, as we talk about how the information is going to move through users, you need to figure out who's going to come next. And you're going to talk to that person on what they need from your deliverable. Do they need an annotated wireframe? Or would they prefer a prototype? Whatever it is that they need, you need to talk to them to figure out you're getting the right details on your product. Again, for example, what do I need to get the job done? If I'm redesigning a website for search engine optimization, I need to figure out how I'm going to label it for SEO best practices. And the reason why I need to do this, now you can figure out who's missing from the project, or maybe why they're involved. When they keep showing up to meetings, and you're like, I don't know who this person is. Now you can figure out why. So again, when you're asking, what do I need to get this job done, and who do I get that from, you're making sure you have all the players that need to be there. Now we create our process. So when it comes to what happens first, there's one thing I always ask. Start with what happens last. So what happens last? What's the deliverable that comes last, right? It's a product we deliver. That makes sense. But if you work from backwards, it's going to tell you where the deliverables are going to be passing to, and so you can figure out who needs to make that first deliverable or who needs to get that first information in there. For example, we'll do a simple one. Oops. If we do a standard design flow, right? QA can't QA anything unless they have something to look at. The builders can't build anything unless they have the design they're looking at. The designers can't design anything unless they figure out what is the purpose of the design. Now this is super, super simplified. We know, and that's why we're here, it's a lot more complex than this. Because first you have your strategists. They're going to be telling you and directing you which way to go. Then you have your SME. These, again, are the people that are going to be providing you information throughout the entire project. You're going to have your researchers who tell the information architect what information they need to put out there. Information architect is going to talk to the UX designer and be like, hey, this is how we need to organize the information on the page. The UX designer and the UI designer work together to make it look and act like they want. And if you're lucky, you have a writer that comes in there to make sure everything is worded perfectly. But it's not just one row of this. It's an iterative project. You do this process over and over again in your own little group before it moves on to the next one. Because then the UX and UI designer are constantly also checking in with the front-end developer to make sure that they can actually create these interactions. And the back-end developers to make sure we're getting all the information we need. And again, this is an iterative process. It's not just one person at one time. They're working together and collaborating more often. We have our quality assurance people checking everything. And then during the whole time, we have the project owner and approver that's going to be putting their hands into everything as well. So this is a little bit messier. And this is actually what it looks like big. So this is actually a process I set up for one of my people that I've worked with before a project. We have the different elements of UX design up here. And basically we talked about the different parts that we can have inside each of them. We also have the deliverables by the end of this process. And we have our approvals, or who needs to approve all these deliverables. We also have the partners on who we need to check with, so our SMEs during the whole process. And since it is proprietary, some proprietary information, this was part of the process. This was me telling them this was the ideal state, that instead of duplicating work here, where the UX team was actually finding the answers, the team actually needs to find the answers before they started creating the budget, or else, again, those best features or those Cadillac versions that we want are not going to work out as planned. Some of you may feel like this now. That was a lot to take in. And I understand. Every single project that I've ever been on has been a little different. Every process is a little different. Every organization is a little different. Every budget and time management is a little different. So really, you just want to take that information, again, work backwards from where they're receiving from and where they're passing to in order to figure out where the information comes first. And then you can figure out where it needs to go all the way through. And remember, the most important thing is that you are designing content for the user. The content is the AR/VR experience. It's the website. It's the app's task and abilities. That content is the most important piece that you're designing. And every time you change the content, you're going to have to change the design of that content, which means that it's rippled throughout the process. If you're having to do that over again, then so is everybody else. So just try to finalize that content first and then move on to the next part of the process. So now that we have our project brief, we have the purpose, what goal and tasks were completed, the parameters, what are our constraints and our pain points, the people involved, and the process, generally what we should look at. Now, once all of these together, they should be in one document that's easily accessible to everyone. You should put it in one place. In fact, you should have all your information in one place. And there's many different places you can do that. In corporations, there's SharePoint and other internal sites that you can drop files. These are some that I use for some of my smaller clients, and most people understand it. But really, the most important thing is, again, make sure that this process document and all the deliverables are going to one place. So if someone has a question, they can look there first and see where it's at before interrupting everybody else's workflow. Now, someone in the survey, when they were asking like what this presentation is going to be about, asked, who is responsible for this? Who is going to answer these questions? Who is going to make sure this is completed? And it's everyone. It would be nice if the project owner, the project manager started out this way, but that's not always going to happen. One of the great things you can do is within your own team, you create these profiles, you create the process. And then as you interact with other people during the project, you can add them on in pieces to see where everything's moving. If anything, your team will be efficient, and the rest of the project will start wondering what you guys are doing right. Most importantly, if you are looking at this and concentrating and organizing the information before you just start moving through it, you'll feel a little bit less like this. So yes, hopefully you got some tricks that instead of feeling like this on every project, you feel like this. Be prepared. Be prepared. This is actually where I came up with the title. So yes, that is all I have for you right now. I do have a list for a sign up in the back, so if you want me to email you the presentation, I will do so. It also has the option for you to figure out if you want to join IXDA, get some emails, and come to some of our events. So I guess we're now ready for questions and answers. Yeah.
On a normal project, about how many people run it on a regular website or a small business, about how many people would you say and all that on average?
So it depends on how small your small business is.
Small business, maybe 15 employees.
Okay.
Selling one product.
Okay. If you're a small business and you're looking to, say, look for someone to design your website, you don't definitely need all those people. I would recommend a UX designer. A UX designer is going to organize your information. It's going to break it down into digestible pieces to make sure your customers understand what you're trying to tell them. And then, of course, you're going to need your developers. Now, depending on how extensive information you maybe need front end and back end or a software programmer. It really depends on what you need to be pulled up and created. But in general, make sure you have a UX designer, make sure you have a developer, and hopefully a project manager, which you could be, or another person could act as.
So more than one person can wear the same hat.
Yeah, so again, as a small business for 15 people, it really depends on your budget. I would say for every project you are going to want a little bit of each. You might need an IA, you might need a UX, you might need a UI, you might need all those people. Sometimes we do dabble in a little bit of each. I, for example, have done research, IA, and UX designer, but I can't be a UI designer. I'm not a graphic person. Like, someone's going to be like, do we need a drop shadow on this button? And I'll be like, I don't know. So you're going to need someone who at least has the concept of all of those, so if they can't do it themselves, they can reach out to somebody who can do it for them. Mm-hmm.
Great presentation. One of the things I struggle with, or I have struggled with in the past, is trying to be too perfect, trying to be too prepared.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I was just talking about this because I've seen lots of videos about people like, you don't want to concentrate too much on the preparation because then you never get anything done. So where do you draw the line between preparation and execution?
That's a good question. In general, you should have a high-level user flow, much like what I started in the beginning, where it could just be like, hey, these are the people that you need, and these are the people, how they're interacting with each other. Now, when it comes to, say, again, UX is very iterative. Like, they work with each other. They work with both the front end, the UI, like the research. So pointing out, like, oh, hey, you're going to talk to this person first, and this person first, and this person first, like, is not necessarily. It's really more acknowledging where you are in the process and who are the people you're going to be working with during it. Does that help a little? Okay. Yeah. One more back there.
Thank you, Morgan. Thank you, Morgan, for that was a pretty intricate, ambitious presentation for sure. I'm kind of curious, what resources would you recommend, like be it books or YouTube channels or tutorial video series, anything like that, for like kind of an overview, high-level view of project management in general? Project
management. So the funny thing is that I've never actually acted as a project manager except for on my own business. I should say my business, I'm the project manager, but for the large contracts that I used to do, I was more of a UX lead where I was leading the UX team, but I was not necessarily leading the whole project. When it comes to organizing project management resources, I would have to say Google it. No, really. That's what I did. Everything that I didn't know, I Googled it. Everything, like especially being a business owner, like everything I don't understand, I want to understand in order to figure out how it is going to move within each other. So really, the more you know about every person and their roles in the process, the better project manager you're going to be, because you know who to go to then and what they need in order to get things done. So yeah, is that everybody? That's everybody.
Any more questions?
Any more questions?